Hey everyone, today I want to show you how to make a really easy bread loaf. It turns out perfect every time and it's really similar to commercially bought bread. A lot of the recipes you'll find on YouTube and on the web, the bread doesn't develop a good gluten, or it's hard to develop that good gluten, and so the bread falls apart when you make a sandwich with it. This bread doesn't fall apart. It's got a really strong gluten, and it's a good starting point if you haven't baked bread before. You're going to need a couple of things here. You're going to need a kitchen scale. I used to, I guess, balk at the thought of using a kitchen scale. I thought that you could do this all with measuring cups or whatever. It just doesn't work right. You need a scale so you get precise measurements. There's no good way of measuring by volume with cups or whatever. You're just never going to get the same results every time. You're going to need a bread pan. I have a Logic bread pan. It's a cast iron pan. You'll need a little bit of butter and some cornmeal or some rice meal. I grind my own rice meal. It's super easy. And you're going to need something to cover your bread up well, or your dough up while it's doing the bulk ferment. The recipe's pretty simple. It's 420 grams of flour, 260 grams of water, 9 grams of yeast, 9 grams of salt. So I'll show you how we mix this up. It's super simple. There's not a ton of kneading or anything like that. First, I'm going to add my water to the mixing bowl. I'm going to add the 9 grams of yeast. I'm going to add the salt. I'm even going to add the oil already. And lastly, I'm going to add the honey. Should be pretty easy to mix it up here. There we go. And then you're just going to go like this. No fancy kneading or anything. You just want to start distributing the ingredients evenly throughout this. A lot of recipes will tell you to wait for the yeast to activate or that sort of thing. You can do that if you want to, but I've found that there's no difference with this recipe as long as you mix it up good here. It's not going to take long to mix it up, maybe a minute or two at the most. And you're going to have kind of a raggedy looking dough at the end. So after 2 minutes of mixing the dough with just that squeezing motion, we have a dough that looks like this. You don't want to add any extra flour to this as you're mixing it. It's going to ruin the result. It gets a little bit sticky, but if you use some sort of spatula or anything kind of with a sharper edge, you should be able to scrape that off fairly easily. Now we're going to let this go into the bulk ferment stage of baking bread. You just want to cover it so it doesn't dry out. It usually takes about an hour for it to double in size. We're looking for it to double in size generally this time of year in the spring or fall. The warmest place in our house to do this is in the oven with the oven light on. So now that this is doubled in size here, we're gonna fold the loaf of bread or the dough 4 times. First you gotta get it out of the bowl. You wanna be gentle. You don't wanna really pack it down too much or tear the gluten of the bread. You don't want to flour the surface or flour your hands. If the dough's too sticky for you to work with, what you'll want to do is have a bowl of water that you can wet your hands with while you're working the dough. One of these dough scrapers come in handy too because it just likes to stick to everything. You want to pull the dough gently. You don't want to tear anything. And fold it once in one direction. Then you want to fold it again. Each fold you're going to not be able to pull it as far. And then again, you'll fold and you'll fold one more time. Before I started this process, the final proofing has gotten to a point where I'm good with it. It took about an hour and 15 minutes today to do the final proof. Our house is a little cooler right now. I'm going to pop it in the oven at 400 degrees for 30 minutes. The way you can test if it's done is if you knock on the top of the bread at about 30 minutes, it should sound fairly hollow. I've found that 400 degrees at 30 minutes, it's always done, always cooked all the way through when I get done with it. Here's the finished result after the bread's been done baking. I'll tag on some still images to the end of this, kind of, I guess, showing this a little better. I've had the best results with slicing this once it's cooled some. I know everyone loves to eat warm bread right out of the oven, but if you eat it while it's still warm, or if you slice it while it's still warm, make sure you got a really sharp knife. Once it's cooled down for maybe 30 minutes to an hour, you'll have the best results for starting to slice it. And yeah, thanks for watching. Bye.